Oh man, look at this guy. He's just going for it. A million notes a second. No melodic structure like whatsoever. Oh, what a mess. Hey guys, hope you're all having a fantastic day out there so far, and thank you for joining me in today's lesson video. So as you might have guessed, today's lesson topic is about guitar shredding, right? Guitar shredders in general. And why I think it's kind of overrated and overdone, especially nowadays. I honestly feel like it's beating a dead horse. But when used in the right context, it can still be really interesting, okay? And before you jump to the comments and say, oh, what do you know about guitar shredding? You know, who are you to say anything about anything, man, right? Well, let me give you a little bit of background about myself. I've been playing guitar for about 24 years, okay? A mixture of being self-taught and also taking lessons from other people, right? I've done a lot of reading, a lot of analyzing, a lot of self-reflecting, right? And I was originally a obsessed shred guitar player myself, okay? I came from that background where I loved, listening to Vinnie Moore on repeat, and Malmsteen, and Tony McAlpine, and, Jeff Loomis, Jason Becker, all the greats. And they're still great, by the way. There's no cheap shot at them. I think Vinnie Moore's still an amazing guitar player because he's very versatile, and we'll get into that later. But the majority of guitar players nowadays that do shredding, right, and this was even, a common thing back then, were overdoing it. They weren't really playing for the music, they were just playing for themselves, kind of an ego-driven thing. And I fell into that myself for a while. So, like I said, I came from that background. I was somebody that was obsessed with playing my scales up and down with the metronome just every day and every possible chance I could get, right? I was obsessed with shredding. I wanted to play as fast as possible, as many notes as possible. That was what I wanted to do. And I got kind of good at it. I got pretty proficient. I'm not going to toot my own horn. But the problem was I didn't know how to turn it off, right? And this is something that a lot of guitar players fall into, right? This sort of shred trap, I call it. You get really good at shredding, but that's all you can do, right? It just sounds like you're playing scales up and down the neck really fast. And yeah, you may be able to punch out 1,000 notes in a millisecond in that measure, but most people don't care for that. And it also doesn't fit the music. Now, I'm going to show you guys some clips of a young lad, okay, myself actually, it's myself, from many years ago, playing in bands, right, bar gigs and whatnot. And this is over 10 years old, this video clip I'm going to show you. But me playing for my own satisfaction, not for the music, right? I'm not trying to compliment the music, I'm just trying to compliment myself. And I didn't realize I was doing this at the time. I just thought it sounded cool and I was having fun. And you might be thinking, well, that's all that matters. But not necessarily. Because even though I was having fun and doing what I wanted to do at the time, I knew something was missing. I didn't know what was missing, but I knew something was missing. I didn't know if it was a technique or maybe my timing. I knew something was wrong, though. Let's just put it that way. And, it might seem silly to think, well, how can you not know you're overplaying? But when you obsess, and this is your whole daily, a routine, just shredding up and down the neck, you don't stop to think about, oh, well, maybe I'm shredding too much, right? You start to think, well, maybe I'm not going fast enough. Maybe I need to add more notes or, whatever, because you're trained in that. You can only play as you practice. So anyways, enough babbling. Let me show you that clip. All right, so that, again, was me about 10 to 15 years ago in different scenarios. overplaying in songs that did not need it, okay? Songs that needed more of a light, mellow, maybe groove or melodic structure instead of just shredding up and down the neck. It may have sounded cool for a second, but then it got kind of old quick. Now, like I said, I always felt like something was missing. I always knew something was not right in my playing. And that came down to eventually being timing one. I wanted my timing to be better. Like I may have had good timing doing these, shred type things, but there was no groove. So I had to work on playing specific things, not for the speed, but for feeling. So maybe I had a metronome on, and I'm or whatever, right? It may seem silly and easy, but it's actually quite difficult to take something simple, put it to a metronome, and make sure you're playing it within those off beats or on beats or however structured you want to do it, right? So that was the first thing that I was missing. The second thing was a lack of theory application. Now, this is what I mean by that. I knew a lot of scales. I knew a little bit of theory. I was a complete idiot, even though it may seem like it. But I was missing how to apply the theory in the scales. Like, yeah, it's great to know C major, right, in 7 positions or whatever. It's good to know these patterns and shapes. But it's not musical. It sounds cool, sure, but it gets old quick because, if you just hear this over and over, I mean, you're only going to listen to that for so long until you get tired of it. So what I had to do was really learn to play musically. I had to learn to break these things up. It's like learning a language. You're not just going to, say A, B, C, D, E, F, G to somebody, right? You need to start building words so you can have sentences so you can communicate with people, right? You're listening and replying or replying and then listening or however it goes. Same thing goes with music. You have to learn these things. Yeah, you learn the scales, you learn the shapes, you learn the theory or whatever, but none of it really means anything until you start applying it, okay? I also like to think of this kind of like if you're a martial art person. I'm a martial art nerd, so forgive me, but this analogy really helps solidify it. It's like learning a kata, right? If you're learning a kata in karate or you're doing your forms in kung fu or whatever, it's a form. It's not meant to be fought with, right? You see people trying to use forms in street fights and they get knocked out. This is kind of the same thing. This is your kata. Playing your scales is your kata or your forms. It's your Sunam Tao or whatever, right? It is not, and I repeat, it is not something you should be just doing on every whim you get in any song, right? This is not musical. So remember, you can only play how you practice, and that's similar to martial arts. You can only fight how you train. If you're not pressure testing or doing realistic scenarios, right, like actually sparring, like full contact, you're probably not going to have a good chance of defending yourself. So same thing goes with when you're playing music. If you're not realistically challenging yourself to play melodically, right, with intervallic structure, playing chord tones with proper timing outside of the regular scale kata, you're probably not going to sound very musical. It's not going to work for you. You're just going to play, again, these things, which, again, sound cool in context, right, for only specific sections. And I still do this myself when I'm building tension or releasing tension. But, it's going to get old quick. You want to learn how to build melodic movements. So let's look at C major here. Okay. And I'm going to look at this not just as a scale, but I'm also going to look at it through intervals. So root, second or 9, third, fourth or 11, fifth, sixth, seventh, root. And again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, root. This is important. So I can start thinking melodically, like, okay, here's my chord tones. See that? Right? Even if I'm in minor, I'm playing, C minor chord, root flat third, fifth. Okay? And then if I want to add intervals on top, I could. I can start blending things in a melodic way, right? So instead of playing up like this, maybe try playing string skipping. See that? Went from the G string, E string, B, D, and then go back to the B, G. You can just kind of start playing up these. fingers kind of starting to walk in a varied position. Now, if you want to learn more about how I look at the fretboard and how I kind of see things connect visually as I'm playing, check out the other video I made on this exact topic, actually, just this last week. I'll leave you a link down below in the description box, so make sure to check that out. So music theory itself is very important when it comes to structuring your lead, but it's not everything, of course, right? Again, it's just music theory. It's not music application, okay? I know a lot of people that have studied music theory that can't really apply any of it in a, musical or melodic context, especially when they're writing their own music. But there are some things in music theory that I think everybody should know, especially if you're trying to play melodic, okay, and you're trying to write your own music or just, get better at improv. All of that will be drastically improved, okay, with a few of these small tips I'm going to give you. So the first is we have to really analyze the chords in the song or backing track, right, that we're playing over. Or even in a song that we're writing, maybe you wrote a cool chord progression, but you're not sure what to play over it. Well, we have to look at the chords and how they function together. There are two ways to look at this. There's functional harmony, and then there's non-functional harmony, okay? Functional is like playing diatonic. And if you guys have no music theory background, well, it basically means that you're playing chords that are built out of the scale. So like if you're in the key of C major, you'd have, 7 chords that you can build with those 7 notes, right? But there's non-functional harmony, where maybe you're doing like a modal interchange type of thing, or maybe you're borrowing a chord just in general. So example here, I'm going to pull up one of my own original songs so you guys can see what I'm talking about. And this whole solo section is built around major 7 chords. Okay, it goes from D major 7 to F major 7, goes back to E major 7, E flat major 7, and then back to D major 7. Second time around, it keeps the same structure, but at the end, instead of playing the E flat major 7, it jumps to G major 7. So you'll notice just all major 7 chords. And if you play those chords just by themselves, it'll sound kind of jazzy or like elevator music, I suppose, right? But these are not diatonic chords. See what I'm saying? These are in different keys, right? We're going from D, we're going to F, we're going to E, we're going to E flat, and there's no diatonic relation because they all contain different notes to build those chords. Now, when you come across these types of chord progressions, you can't just meander through one scale and hope to be fine, right? You can't just shred up and down. You could shred, sure, here and there, but you're going to have to know where to play. And that's where a lot of these shredder guys like myself, from back then, would get lost. Not the me now, of course. So here's what I did. I'll show you the solo that I wrote, and then I'll break it down after. All right, so let me just start this off by saying, yes, shredding was still relevant in the solo, as you guys could tell. This was still sort of a shreddy solo. But I tried to really emphasize chord tones and melodic structures to fit the music in the background chords, right? So you'll notice I'm playing, intervallically. I'm playing chord tones of each chord. I'm targeting the 1, 3, 5, and 7, right? I'm kind of walking through that. And it's very relevant here in this tapped section where I do this major 7 arpeggio. Okay, this is kind of a basic major 7 arpeggio. It's not anything fancy. You probably heard it a million times. But again, this was me just trying to get my foot in the door melodically while still keeping a little bit of shred influence. Okay, now let's look at another example. This is another song of mine. It's called Moonlit Cathedral. And in the solo section here, I move from this B minor 7, and then I modulate down B flat major 7, and I do this twice, okay? Then it jumps to A minor 7 to A flat major 7 twice, and then the solo ends, okay? Now, this is, again, something you can't just meander going scales up and down, right? If you just sit there and play up and down, your kata, right, your guitar kata, you're just going up and down the scale robotically, it's going to sound pretty bland and boring. Even if you shift the key and you start playing, if you go from B minor, right, to B flat major or whatever, or B flat Lydian, it's still going to sound kind of bland and too much like a scale. So my approach here was to play, again, chord tones, keeping on the higher register, right? You'll notice the solo here starts on the higher part of the neck, right, on the E string, descending down, an arpeggio shape. And then I'm walking through chord tones, really trying to target those strong note voicings over those chord changes. That outlines a really cool, like, sci-fi fusion sound. At least in my opinion. Again, I'm not bashing Shred. I think Shred is great. I love Shred to this day. I think some guys do a phenomenal job, like, Vinnie Moore, John Petrucci, Greg Howe, Tony McAlpine, Eric Johnson, Jeff Loomis. There's so many great guitar players out there that are shredders, but also just great musicians. And that's the difference. Anybody can be a good shredder. That's not really a hard thing. Anybody can sit there with a metronome and get blistering fast and clean, right? I prove that. A lot of other guys prove that. It's not a unique thing. But when you could shred tastefully in the right place, melodically, and still be a good musician, right, songwriting-wise, that's rare. I think that's where a lot of these greats shine, because, Vinnie Moore, Greg Howe, and all the rest I mentioned, right, have the ability to play blues. They can play classical. They can play a little bit of jazz, right? They can play these other genres. They can, write songs. They fit, the moment. They use shred to go up, and they use melody. So I think that's why a lot of those great guitar players are still great to this day, right? I always will love Vinnie Moore and Greg Howe, no matter how old I get. I always love those guys. Even if they are shredder guys, I still love the melodic structure of their music, and it inspires me a lot. And, for those of you also saying, well, who is this guy giving us this advice? Like, what do you know about anything? Yeah, you said you used to be a shredder, but, like, what melodically have you done? Well, glad you asked. I have a lot of albums, so if you guys want to listen to my music on Spotify, you can, or you can check out some of my older videos. And the reason I say this is because you can see the transition from me being kind of a poor songwriter to being an okay songwriter, okay? For instance, my beginning music, if you go back really early in my channel or on Spotify, you'll see some tunes that are really, like, just cringy. They're kind of rough mixed. There's a lot of shred, not a lot of melody. The timing is kind of wonky. You get what I'm saying? It's just, it leaves a lot to be desired. It was okay for what it was, but, again, to me, it's kind of cringe. But if you look at the most current stuff I've done, like my last album I'm coming out with, Reaper's Kiss and stuff, I'm not trying to give myself a pat on the back, but I was able to really write some interesting tunes, in my opinion, that were, shreddy in some ways, in the right places to build tension and release it, but also kept the melodic structure, right? A lot of nice chord voicings with 7th chords, 9th chords, kind of a fusion jazz sound with metal, which was something I was going for. I was trying to find a nice gothic metal sound, but really harping on that melodic structure, right? Nice motifs, jazz modal changes, sometimes even just simple little melodies, right? And if you guys again didn't see the CD, it's like that. We can kind of see it. This will be coming out soon on Spotify. You'll be able to get your digital download, or if you want a physical copy, I still got physical copies, but sorry, I had to do a shameless plug there. Anyways, so yeah, my whole point to that is I have experience playing in bar bands doing cover songs. I've done the top 40 thing. I have experience doing session work. I have experience, writing music and composing my own music and mixing it, and, doing this for years. I have experience teaching. I've been teaching for the last 10 years. Right? I've been playing for 24 years, so I have a lot of experience in a lot of different things. And again, I'm not saying that to toot my own horn, but I'm saying that so you guys can trust me, because there are a lot of guitar players out there on YouTube, and the majority of them don't write their own music, right? A majority of them don't know how to write their own music. They may have learned it in theory, but they never learned to apply it. Majority of them may know how to play scales, but, how many of them actually know how to play them melodically and make, melodic movements over backing tracks and improvise on the spot without it sounding like a scale? Because as soon as I hear something like this over a backing track, let's say I play this movement, if I hear that and somebody starts doing this, over and over and over, I lose interest like immediately, even if they're just playing slow. Yeah, no, I'm instantly turned off. I tune out. I turn it off. I don't want to hear it. I've heard that so many times. It's just, and I don't mean that to be mean. I want to hear something musical. Do something musical with the scales, right? Which is the whole point of this video. So if I hear, instead, maybe somebody comes up to me and they start doing this, or whatever movement they're playing right on top of this. Right, kind of more of a jazzy approach even. It doesn't even have to be jazz. It could be kind of a bluesy sound, right? And again, I'm all for shred and jamming, right? As you guys seen in this video, I showed you some clips. Like, I love playing that melodic music, but I love keeping the structure of the, the song in place, complementing the music, not complimenting myself, right? Playing to have a conversation with the music. You want to benefit the rest of the band members, especially in a band setting. When you guys are playing live with somebody, you want to make sure you're really fitting the music and the atmosphere, and you guys are really, communicating. That's what music is, right? You're listening, right? Then you're joining in. It's like a conversation. You're listening to what somebody's saying and you're replying. That's what good music is, right? You're on the same wavelength. But if you're just sitting there playing at your own world, the band's going to feel unconnected, and people are going to hear that. Even if they're not musicians, they're going to see it just doesn't fit, right? Hopefully this ADHD rant made sense to you guys. I guess, again, the main takeaway: play with better timing and groove. Right, less about just being like a robot. Like I said, try to get more of a broken timing. Right. 2, play your scales in a non-linear fashion. So string skipping, play various interval combinations. Don't play just up and down staccato. Right, we talked about this. And then lastly, number 3, let the music breathe. Let the notes ring out. Let the notes breathe with the music. Don't suffocate the music. You can play little quick lines here and there if you want, but try to, again, focus mainly on melody, structure. Let the notes ring out a bit. Don't be just another Instagram guy shredding up and down the neck with no melodic purpose, okay? So, awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope it kind of helps you out. If you want to take lessons with me, you sure can. Let me know down in the comment section below or shoot me a message to my email. It's lestermitchellguitarist@gmail.com. I'll throw it up on the screen for you. And I do have a Patreon. I'm putting up licks and videos exclusively for the members on there. You can check that out as well if you want. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.